I was most moved by the ability for the educators to listen to government mandate and to say, to look at it, examine it, and to weed out what they thought was junk. Educators who felt that it was easier to get forgiveness and permission, who would dare to try new things. We had wonderful discussions. I remember getting in a lot of trouble in my own personal life because we had this meeting in my home, and it was in an evening, and a whole group of educators, and they were all there, and it was wonderful, and my wife reminded me that that was our anniversary. And that was not unusual for people to come together on their own time, to write new curriculum on their own time. It was a different time. There was no issues about, yeah, I'll do it, but how much is it going to cost, and is it going to help my professional learning portfolio, and am I going to get credit for it? It wasn't about that. It was a wonderful exchange of ideas. We were rapidly growing. We had a lot of experienced people and a lot of young people who were learning from the master, so to speak. We had an opportunity to experiment with things, to try things. There weren't people constantly at you about why things didn't work. We were on the cusp. As I said, we had visitors from, I think, 75. At one point, we did a survey, and there were like 75 different countries, thousands of people who would come through. And what that does for your staff, I mean, to be recognized in that way, and we'd have parents coming through and crying about the simple things that we did, things that we never thought were a big deal at all, just welcoming little kids into a school, and educators who really cared and would say, how do we get here? How do we do this? So, well, if you're serious, start tomorrow with the first kid in grade 1 and take every kid after that. And pretty soon, 8 years, you're in an integrated school system. And you don't have to go back and cure the world, and you don't have to bring everybody, open the doors, because we didn't. I mean, to think that what we did, when you look at some of the severely injured kids that are in our school systems now, we didn't have a clue about those kids. I mean, we took kids that would now be called learning disabled, and it was a big deal. I mean, to go to a point, I remember as a superintendent later on, going to a board meeting, talking to them about whether or not a non-resuscitation code could be honored, because we had students whose parents wanted, despite the fact that they were in very serious need of care, wanted them in a school. And the school was prepared to take them, and there was whole issues around non-resuscitation codes and oxygen and catheterization, and we never had any of that. I mean, that all came as we grew. I mean, some of the biggest difficulties we had was how we were going to go about changing a 13-year-old boy's diaper, because we didn't have any male educational assistant, and to have the whole staff, all the men on staff, volunteer to change his diaper. I mean, there were times when you wanted to cry. That was one of them, when everybody said, "Hey, we'll do it." You know, hey, there's no big deal. And so that kind of thing was going on in our school system all the time. It was a wonderful time in education. The government didn't necessarily intrude into what we were doing. As a matter of fact, they were happy to ignore us. You know, that's just Jim Hanson's pet little project, and ignored us. But what we found is that Jim was getting invitations to all kinds of school boards, and he would bring staff along, including me. I was luckily, on many occasions, to go to other school boards and talk to them about what we did. Not what you should do, this is what we did.